Hi, I'm Raborn Johnson for Sample Library Review, and today I'm checking out Expanse Hybrid String Engine by Insanity Samples. Including both synth samples and samples from a live string ensemble, Expanse blends these synthetic and organic textures into a mixture of pulsing pads and experimental string textures. Expanse Hybrid String Engine is compatible with the full version of Contact 5.8.1 or above and downloads as 2 GB. It includes 8 textural layers across samples from both the string ensemble and curated synth textures and includes 80 presets. Expanse Hybrid String Engine is normally available from Insanity Samples for £129, but at time of review was available for the sale price of £64.99. So today we're checking out Expanse Hybrid String Engine by Insanity Samples. Expanse is really a combination of both synthetic and organic samples where you have both a live string ensemble and 4 different synth layers that have been curated by Insanity Samples. Now, the engine, there's a lot going on here and a lot of flexibility, but just to briefly explain kind of what's going on the surface, this Arco layer is the live string ensemble, which really are live string sustains. You have a tremolo layer, which is the same string ensemble, obviously playing trims. You have a staccato layer and a pizzicato layer, which are especially geared to pulse via the sequencer or the arpeggiator while you're holding down more sustained notes for things like pulsating pads or kind of experimental textures. There's a whole lot going on in the engine that we'll talk about as we dive in, but let's go ahead and jump right into the sounds, and then we'll get a little bit into the engine more later. So as we get started in the sounds, just to show you what's going on in the contact snapshots, you have 4 categories of sounds: longs in motion, short swells, short motion, and experimental. And there's 80 different presets across these 4 different categories. So let's go ahead and dive right into some of the sounds to give you a taste of what's going on with Expanse. So in the background, you can hear that staccato and that pizzicato layer pulsating. I'm going to turn that up a little bit so you can hear a little bit more of that to give you an idea of what's happening. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to the next sound. Decay cutoff with driving pulse. I like how descriptive these preset names are. They let you know exactly what to expect. Let's jump over to distorted filter mod start with softer sustain. Go ahead and jump over to fast mod strings with pizzicato art. All right, let's see here. Let's go to filter mod strings with fast art. Okay, let's go ahead and jump down to grand strings with driving ARP. Okay, let's jump down to light strings with fast ARP overlay. And that's really the idea of Expanse Hybrid String Engine, is really giving you kind of these textures, these pulsating pads that have the sustains, but also kind of have that underlying movement that it makes the sound evolve and makes it a little bit more rhythmic. Okay, let's jump down to lopsided spinning filter mod. So you can really tell there's a big variance in the kinds of sounds that you can get out of this. A lot of different things going on. Octave strings with subtle synth support. And let's try old tape deck strings. And let's pick one more sound out in this category. How about, let's see, tense strings and synth with mod and driving pulse. So that gives you a feel for kind of what's going on in these longs in motion, which again are really sustained textures with kind of movement going on beneath. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on again in the engine. So you do have 3 different controls here for the main articulations, which are really the sustain layers. You've got an expression and dynamics, which can be controlled, of course, by your mod wheel for the dynamics, and then you can assign both the Both of these, including vibrato here, an expression, you can assign those to different MIDI CC values as well so that you can control those with your MIDI controller. I'm doing that now, as you can see. Here's my vibrato, my dynamics, and my expression. I'm going to turn all three of those down though. Actually, you know what? Let's turn those up and let's turn all of these layers off so you can hear just an example of each of these layers individually. So this is the main articulation layer. And then if I turn all of that down, and let's turn on the trims and give you an idea of what's going on there. And you know what? We've got some effects going on here. Let me turn all of this down. Let's go ahead and get rid of every bit of the effects going on. And let me make sure to turn off any sequencing and arpeggiators happening. And I might not capture it all, so please forgive me if I miss something here. I'm trying to turn off all the LFOs and everything so that you can really get a feel for what these layers sound like on their own before you begin to manipulate them. And then you've got your staccato layer. And your pizzicato. And you've got your synth 1 layer. And your synth 2 layer. And your synth 3 layer. And your last synth layer, synth 4. So you can see these are very much different, very, very varied, you might say. And again, as you have each of these, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, but you have this macro control where you can actually assign. I really like the symbols here and how Insanity Samples have really made this easy to use. You can have 3 macro controls that you can assign any of these individual layers to. Now, the main articulation, there's no modulation or no macro for that. Those are just mainly controlled by the expression, dynamics, and vibrato, and those will stay on all the time. You don't purge those samples. You can turn them down, obviously, but they're not going to be purged. You can turn them back up and layer them with any of the other samples as well. The modulation matrix that you see here, you can assign, an X, a square, or a triangle, and that corresponds to the different macro controls here. So if I have like these 2 triangles, you'll see that when I move the triangle control, I can move both of those at the same time, whereas if I assign these 3 to the X and I turn the X on, I can do all 3 of those at the same time as well, which is really, really neat. You've got obviously your filter and your amp envelope, which has your AHDSR controls, your attack, hold, decay, sustain, and release. You've got a filter cutoff and resonance. And then where the real magic happens is with the modulation matrix. You have 2 different LFOs going on here, which you can assign on this page using multiple different waveforms for each LFO. You can assign each of these values to a different LFO. So you can assign, the main layer, the different trims, staccatos, the different synths. You can assign each of those to a different LFO. You can assign the filter cutoff and resonance, the pitch, pan, and you can even modulate an LFO with another LFO. So you could modulate LFO 1 with LFO 2, for instance. You have your sequencer, which your sequencer will include both a pitch sequencer and a velocity sequencer. You have up to 6 patterns that you can program. You can solo those out. You can tie those together. Obviously, you've got your rate, your duration, you've got both a regular on mode and a hold mode, which I always like a hold mode on a sequencer. It just makes it so much easier to program. And then you have your arpeggiator, which is very much what you would expect to have in an arpeggiator. Your duration, your rate, your octave, your mode, once again with the hold mode, which I really like. Not exactly sure what the hold plus is for. I'm not exactly sure on that one. But this is your arpeggiator. And then with your effects, you also have distortion, delay, and reverb. And you have an EQ section as well, with, your frequency bands, the gain on the frequency bands, and the Q, the resonance on those. So yeah, a lot going on under the hood that you can weave together to make your own sounds. Let's go ahead and move over to short swells. Let's start with fast and intense cutoff mod riser. It is a quick riser, really fast and intense. Okay, and let's go to fast riser with continued pizzicato arp. And let's move along to medium short swells, strings, and synth. And let's go for slow distorted riser with a sharp end. That's a pretty cool riser right there. Very different. And let's do very short crescendo. Let's do the long delay one on that one. And finally, let's do zip up in this category. That's a good one to end on, zip up. Okay, let's go to short motion. Let's start with this 3-2 clav bounce. Okay, let's go to almost entirely percussive. And let's go to chord arps filter mod. And how about look left, look right, bam! and very short one strike slow. Okay, let's see. Let's move to very short cutoff mod and fast ARP. All right, in our last category, experimental, let's go to complex swarm mod with strings and synths. Let's go to deep mod random shifts, synth and strings. Let's go to Eternal Engine with Slow Sequencer. This has most of this library. I'm noticing has there's a lot of sounds that have kind of a lo-fi feel to them. That have kind of that cassette warble and some of that in it, which I find interesting. Heavy mod fast ARP. Let's go to Mosquito Swarm. Let's go to overlapping sequences with waves of pad. And let's do slap rhythm. And let's end it out with water drops in space. And that, my friends, is a look at Expanse Hybrid String Engine. As you can see, there's a whole lot of different layers going on here, from the live strings with the sustains, the trims, the staccatos, the pizzicatos, the 4 different synth layers. There's a whole lot going on with the LFOs, the sequencer, the ARP, the engine. I do like this macro control. I'm really a fan of simplicity, and I like how easy they've made that to assign those different layers to the macro. And again, you just have tons of modulation options. Thanks for checking out Expanse Hybrid String Engine with me today. So what do you think? Would you use this instrument in your own tracks? Comment below and let us know your thoughts. Make sure to like the video and share it with your friends, and also subscribe to the channel. Be sure to check out SampleLibraryReview.com for more news and reviews, and to stay in the know about weekly sales via our weekly deal compressor.